All right. Good morning and welcome to another morning episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I'm your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time so early. Remember, folks, if you are a candidate running for office and you'd like an opportunity to be on the show, then head on over to candidates.libertydad.com and get yourself booked. The link is in the show notes. Available times are Tuesday and Thursday mornings at 7:30 a.m., Wednesday and Thursday evenings at 7:30 p.m. All times are Eastern. Speaking of candidates, tomorrow night, I will have Reese Wood, who is running for Janesville City Council out of Wisconsin, with me to discuss his run. That's at 7:30 p.m. tomorrow night, Wednesday. And then Thursday morning, 7:30 a.m., Andrew Underwood will join me to discuss his run for U.S. House out of Georgia with Georgia's 14th district. And then Thursday night, Alan Buckley will join me at 7:30 p.m. to discuss his run for U.S. Senate, also out of Georgia. So it looks like the Georgia folks have taken over tomorrow, or not tomorrow, but Thursday. So look forward to that. Speaking of candidates, today I have a candidate that is running for North Carolina's 10th district for Congress. Please welcome Steve Feldman as he joins us to the show to discuss his run for office.
My
Steve,
pleasure
good
to
morning.
be
How
here.
are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Yes, it is very easy to sign up to be on your podcast. So for those candidates who are listening.
Awesome. Yeah, it was funny. Regular listeners of the show will they'll tell you that I'm notoriously terrible about scheduling people. And then yeah, I like calendars and me don't mix, which you really have to have a handle on. And then part of the challenge was there's all these different mediums, right? So you've got like Facebook Messenger, you've got text message, you've got Twitter, you've got, email, you've got all these different ways to manage people. And then I've got people that are like helping out the show sometimes, that are really invested in candidates. And so they're also trying to help. And so like there was just always like I wouldn't update the calendar fast enough and I would double book people and it was awful. And then I went to AI and I was like, is there a way to streamline this? And it was like, well, Google has this bookings feature. And I was like, say no more. So yeah, it's awesome.
AI is very useful.
Yes, yeah, it was very instrumental in like and it's crazy because I did that and then all of a sudden I think I've got like 8 or 9 people scheduled for the future already right now. And I not to sound lazy, but I barely had to lift a finger. And it's not the lifting a finger part, it's just the part that I didn't get anything confused and messed up. So,
That's
and I
great.
could easily look and be like, "Oh, I have a guest coming up. Great, let me go do my research." So,
And I noticed this is show number 667.
yes.
I am so glad I didn't have the last show.
Well, it was about taxes. Take that as you will. Property tax. So, yeah, that's probably for the better. No bad omens there for anybody that's running for office. All right, good sir. So let's dive right into it. What inspired you to run for U.S. House versus just doing what you're normally doing, or any other position for that matter?
Yes, I was chronically dissatisfied with federal deficit spending.
Hmm.
I want to leave my kids a country that's solid, not one that's bankrupt. And that just ached at me, gnawed on me. But what really pushed me over the edge
Hmm.
was our support for Israel killing Palestinian families.
Okay.
Um, I'm Jewish. I have close relatives in Israel. I've been to Israel several times. I grew up going to Hebrew school. I feel really close to that situation.
Hmm.
And, I've been in the homes of Palestinian families too. And seeing our support for violence just pushed me over the edge to say, I just can't sit back anymore. I need to do something.
Gotcha. Now, when you say violence, I want to kind of nitpick at it, not at you necessarily, because there seems to be like two strains of conversation. It's either you completely support Israel and everything they're doing because, hey, they drop leaflets, they do this, they do that. They've done more than most militaries might otherwise. And are then there are some who say, look, I get it. You should be able to defend yourself, but you've gone too far, right? So it's like the gone too far crowd, and then the hey, they're justified in everything they do. Kind of like what would be acceptable, I guess, to you? Obviously, not the everything they do that spurred you, but would you find it acceptable to say, hey, if you dialed it back, or are you saying like, hey, don't respond at all? Like, kind of where do you sit in this?
Yeah, I'm glad we started off with a topic that's so easy and not controversial. Um, uh, I I look at things from principle.
Hmm.
I'm driven by that, and
Okay.
let me set the stage for how I view the situation, because the
Hmm.
context really, I think, determines which of these two sides you fall on. And let me just say, like a lot of things about which there are conflicts,
Hmm.
I don't view it as a good versus evil conflict. I think there are good people on both sides of conflicts. It's going to be a theme we'll probably talk about a lot over the next hour. I think there's people on one side who really want peace and
Hmm.
who want to get there peacefully. And there's people who want peace just as much, but who believe you have to use violence to get to peace. I think we're not dealing with people who really want to be violent, who want to killing it. So I think both sides really want peace, but they feel different ways of how to get there.
Okay.
So, I grew up in this Hebrew school environment, learning that and I lost family in the Holocaust. My mom, if she heard a loud sound, it would like bring to her mind the sound of the train cars closing on her
Mm.
family being taken to the death camps in Germany and Poland. That's my background. And in Hebrew school, we were taught, oh, the Arabs hate us, because we're Jewish, because we were so successful. Their
Hmm.
goal was to annihilate the Jewish people. They're cockroaches. They don't care about human life. All this stuff that I even heard the thing from supposedly Golda Meir said, the Israeli prime minister. I'm not sure she ever said it, but I've heard it repeated recently that, we'll have peace when Palestinian mothers love their children, you know, uh, more than they hate us Jews, which is a ridiculously racist notion when you think about it, that mothers don't love their children more than anything. I'm quite confident all
Hmm.
mothers love their children more than anything.
Right.
So I'm traveling, visiting Israel with family, and they're showing me the whole country. And we come over this hillside. I remember the moment we come over this hillside, and I'm looking down over this beautiful valley of farms and factories, of forest with trees that I might have helped plant when I was a kid, because I collected dimes to plant trees in Israel. And it occurred to me then, if this was all a land of empty swamps and deserts like I had been taught, how did 700,000 Palestinians become refugees in the first place in the founding of Israel? There was something about this that just didn't make sense. It's kind of like, I'm interested in chemistry, physics, and math. It was kind of like back 100 or so years ago when they were looking at quantum effects for the first time and going, something about this, our understanding of physics isn't right.
Hmm.
So I started looking into it, and I found that Israel had to found Israel. And let me just say, I started looking at Israeli Jewish historical sources, because that's what I trusted at the time. And I found that we committed atrocities at this town, and then committed massacres and rapes at the town Saf Saf. That the Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, in his autobiography, reported expelling 70,000 men, women, and children just from the towns of Lydda and Ramla, and where they had put people into a mosque and then blew up the mosque. That the Israeli Defense Force put out a report saying the reason Palestinians fled their homes, in order of importance, were: number one, we forced them out; number two, we forced them out; number three, we forced them out. Now, separating people on the basis of their religion is anathema to me. It's kind of like, to me, southern United States not so long ago, putting people, having separate bathrooms,
Hmm.
or South Africa claiming to be a democracy by putting the black majority into Bantustans. And when you push the Palestinian families into the West Bank and Gaza and make them refugees, so that you can claim, so the minority, us Jews, can claim we're the majority and we have a democracy. That's not a democracy to my way of thinking. So with that as background, when I see Israel slaughtering entire Palestinian families, I don't think of it as self-defense. I don't think there's a moral high ground for it.
Gotcha. All right. Then presumably you would be against any foreign aid or any assistance when it comes to Israel, which tends to be a hot topic because you've got a large portion of America who says, "Hey, we've got to defend Israel." A large part of that is related to their religious beliefs. Another part of it is, hey, they're an ally. Another part of it is, hey, like you said, people are like, oh, they're trying to kill them. And I'm not trying to downplay that, but these are just the arguments that people make in terms of supporting him. But as a Congress member, I presume then, and feel free to tell me otherwise, you would say no support, no military support, no financial support. Is that correct?
No, surprisingly not for a libertarian, especially after what I just said.
Sure.
I believe America is a phenomenal country. We are a great country. We are extraordinarily wealthy. We have tremendous resources. We should be helping people in other countries. And like every other American, I think we should be working towards peace. But I don't think we should be working towards peace by killing people. I think we should be working towards peace by being good role models, by helping people, by using our resources to repatriate refugee families, to rebuild, to build schools, hospitals, to take our young people and teach them trades like building, plumbing, electricity, instead of killing people. And then when they could go into other countries and help people, and then come back and rebuild our infrastructure and strengthen our country further. That's the kind of foreign assistance I would like. I would not like to see us give another bomb to anybody. Libertarianism, I think of as a very good philosophy, one that probably most people share, that you should be allowed to do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting others.
Right.
And going into other countries, the people who support the violence actually think we're helping people with the violence that we commit. They think today we're going into Iran, we're helping the Iranian people by committing massive violence. And I don't disagree with their goal of wanting to help others. I disagree with their way of going about it.
Gotcha. So on your site, you say war is immoral. Do you mean all war, or do you mean certain war? Like when it goes too far or something like that?
The vast majority of it, you could probably, if somebody is punching you in the face, it's okay to push their fist out of the way.
Okay.
If it were true that Iran wanted to destroy our country and had nukes ready to fly off, and they were in the air to knock those nukes down or destroy the infrastructure for doing it, might make sense.
Okay, so there's a place for defense, there's a place for violence, but you're just saying it's a very narrow place and we can work a lot harder to not get to that point. Is that what I'm hearing?
You're hearing that, and you're hearing that a lot of times when we think we're on the side of justice and peace in the violence we commit, we're misguided.
Gotcha.
We believe in supporting democracy, but because we're addicted to oil, in the 1950s, we overthrew the democratically elected Iranian prime minister and installed a dictator in their country. We supported that dictator and his secret police for 25 years. Subsequently, we supported Saddam Hussein, the guy who we call evil. We gave him the satellite intelligence, where to use chemical weapons, weapons of mass destruction on the Iranian people in a war that killed 600,000, I think, Iranian young men. Uh, we've imposed sanctions on their country for years that caused tremendous suffering.
Mhm.
I'm a dermatologist. Dermatologists have been very good to me. The Iranian dermatologist invited me to come speak there a couple times, so I've gotten to go to Iran.
Oh,
I've
okay.
gotten to pray at the synagogue in Iran. They're not even killing their own Jews, much less wanting to kill all the Jews on the planet. And when I asked a Jewish person at the synagogue, are things hard here? He said, yes. And I asked, well, is it because of religious persecution? He said, what? No, it's because of the American sanctions on our economy.
Mm.
We're horrified by the protests and the reaction to the protests in Iran, resulting in so many deaths. If we hadn't imposed sanctions, if their economy wasn't so bad, I don't think the Iranian people would be protesting so much.
Gotcha. Okay. So, all yeah, so getting involved in, sorry, I was so busy listening I wasn't preparing my next question. So getting involved then is generally something that you say, hey, we should stay out of it, even if it's not necessarily violent, unless we're assisting somebody, like, hey, you need some assistance over there. You're having trouble building some infrastructure, perhaps we will then send over some of our resources to assist in that. But outside of that, we're working toward peace. That sounds to me like what I'm hearing here is basically stay out unless we're assisting. Otherwise, you know, push toward peace.
Yes, I think being a good role model is one of the best ways to affect the behavior of other people. The golden rule, I think, is a very good rule. If we don't think that attacking us is a good idea, we shouldn't be attacking others.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Let's shift gears here a little bit to taxes, maybe something a little bit lighter. Maybe not for libertarians. Sorry, guys. We hate taxes. On your site, you say simplify the system. How do we simplify the system without collapsing the government? Or, if you're talking like, hey, we're going to simplify it and make it more streamlined. We're not going to, take as much taxes, what have you. How do we simplify the system without causing any problems? What's that look like to you?
Yes, I'm quite confident that all Americans want our country to be strong. Libertarians, Democrats, Republicans, everybody, independents. We all want the country to be on a good fiscal standpoint. We're spending way too much money. It's trillions of dollars a year further in debt that we're putting on our children, and that's just morally wrong. We need a tax system that's fair. We need to reduce spending. If we don't reduce spending, then I've gotten notifications from my Republican congressman that, isn't it great we're cutting taxes? If you don't cut spending, you're not really cutting the taxes. You're just putting that tax on my child. So we need a system of taxation that people feel that is fair. I think to do that, a flatter tax system, it's a much more simple tax system that just describes what your income is and you pay tax accordingly. I suspect we're paying enough taxes right now, but we desperately need to reduce the spending. That's where the tax issue really lies.
Right.
And it's really a surprisingly simple issue, because I think it's 90% of federal spending is either healthcare spending, Medicare and Medicaid, Social Security, national defense, and interest on the debt. And so if you don't do something about those areas, then you're not really addressing the problem. And so talking about, oh, we need to reduce waste. No, there's not that much. If it was a waste, and if either the Democrats or Republicans could have fixed it, they would have done so by now. Both sides have had their chances. We have serious problems in areas of major concern that they're not willing to touch. They're not willing to touch the massive military spending. We spend as much as the next 9 countries combined. We're spending as much as China and Russia and a whole bunch of other countries combined. If we would just defend our borders, we wouldn't have to spend nearly so much money. And then we're spending all this money on healthcare because we have a healthcare system that just does not make sense, that is extraordinarily costly. And then there's the interest on the debt, which is going to continue to grow and just take up more and more of the budget.
Gotcha. So in terms of simplify the system, then it would be, hey, we're going to reduce what we're doing, which will reduce the amount of money that we absolutely have to spend in the first place. Instead of going around policing the world, for instance, we will bring our troops home, manage our own borders, and otherwise leave people alone. Therefore, we do not need to pay the money out for the military for those particular things that we're paying for abroad. Correct?
Yes, paying for spending that money abroad is almost worse than burning it.
Mhm.
It's because it doesn't make us safer. So it's actually worse than just throwing the money away.
Right.
It makes us less safe. Our the security apparatus in our country that has grown because we're making people in other countries angry at us.
Right.
One of the principles I learned from my experiences in medicine is that when people in your group tell you something about people in another group about which they don't have direct observations, don't trust what they tell you. You have to go and investigate that other group, hear from them directly.
Mhm.
And a wonderful example of this is how our leaders would tell us that terrorists hate us for our freedom.
Mhm.
That doesn't make any sense at all when you think about it. They don't hate us for our freedom. Before 9/11, after the first Gulf War, we imposed sanctions on Iraq that, according to the medical literature, killed 500,000 children.
Wow.
And Clinton's Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, was asked about this by Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes. And it's a clip that's very easy to find. You just Madeleine Albright 60 Minutes, and you'll find it very easily. Leslie Stahl asked Madeleine Albright, "We've heard that 500,000 children have died. That's more children than killed in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it?" And Madeleine Albright says, "We think this is a hard choice, but we think the price is worth it." They didn't attack us because of our freedom. They attacked us because, she coldly said, we killed 500,000. I don't know that we really killed 500,000 children. Maybe the Lancet article was off by a factor of 10. Maybe we only killed 50,000 children with the sanctions we imposed. But they didn't hate us because of our freedom. Killing those children, supporting dictators in their countries, putting our troops in their countries. Look, what other countries' troops would we want stationed in our country?
Right.
Nobody. We don't want to. The idea that we should be putting in our troops in their countries violates the golden rule.
Gotcha. All right. So the way to simplify taxes is to stop doing things, plain and simple. Which I agree with. That makes sense to me, right? Like, and I know people hate it when we compare the national finances to like home finances, but at the end of the day, there is a certain level of similarity. If you're spending too much, then or the more you spend, the more revenue, the more income that you need in order to sustain it. And if you want to reduce the amount that you need coming in, or reduce the amount that you're spending, then you have to reduce the things that you're doing. It's just a pretty simple equation, and I think that applies, even if it's a little bit more complex when it comes to the U.S. government. I want to get into healthcare, which obviously is your wheelhouse. So, what are the top one or two things that Congress could do to improve healthcare? When I say improve, I'll leave that up to you to define what that means, whether you want to specify cost, or you want to specify, better healthcare in terms of outcomes. You feel free to define it how you want. I'm just curious, what are your top one or two things that Congress could do?
The number one thing we could do is make Medicare and Medicaid high deductible health plans
Hmm.
and give people an HSA so that they could afford the deductibles. What does that do immediately? It makes healthcare incentives more in line with what they need to be. Everywhere else in our economy, almost everywhere else, the people consuming the good pay for that good. And so they have an economic incentive to ration the care for themselves and to seek lower prices and higher quality.
Mhm.
What does that do? It makes cell phones get better and better every year. It makes televisions become bigger and bigger with better definition and lower prices all the time. It makes the cost of buying groceries very affordable,
Mhm.
very low. Healthcare doesn't have that. Healthcare has some third party paying for the healthcare. So the person consuming the healthcare doesn't care about the cost of it
Right.
because somebody else has paid for it. And when that happens, all hell breaks loose. If we had a system of grocery stores, if our government said, groceries, eating like good health is a human right. So we're going to give everybody insurance to pay for their food. People would go into the grocery stores, head straight to the lobster section.
Mhm.
And they would buy these lobsters that cost, I don't know, $100, $200, $300 each. And the lobster tank would be gold plated, and there'd be no incentive for the prices to come down. The apples would cost maybe $10 each, $20 each, kind of like an aspirin in the hospital costing $50 each.
Mhm.
People have to be in control to have that supply and demand and basic economics work. Our country is incredibly wealthy because of our capitalist system. Before China went capitalist, we talk about communist China. They called themselves a communist party, but it's not communism anymore there. When they had a communist system, they had almost 1 billion people at the extreme level of poverty, starving.
Mhm.
When they moved to a more capitalist economy, Deng Xiaoping was able to get 800 million people out of extreme poverty. Having an economic system of supply and demand where people have incentives to seek out high quality at low cost and are responsible for their economic decisions is a really good thing. And it's what's missing in healthcare. And we could turn that around overnight by creating a high deductible health plan system for the government insured plans so that all of those people on Medicaid and Medicare, instead of saying, okay, well, I'll just go to whatever doctor, I don't care about the cost, they'd be like asking doctors, how much do you charge?
Mhm.
And as soon as that happens, prices are going to start dropping, and it's going to make healthcare more affordable for the uninsured.
Mhm. I gotcha. Okay. Excuse me. On your site, you also state one day, on day one, I'd like to introduce legislation giving Americans back their freedom to purchase medications from wherever they want without government restrictions. Some of the medications my patients need are generic, yet still are very, very costly. These same medications are very affordable in Canada and Mexico. Why is it that Americans cannot already purchase medications from wherever they want? What's going on?
There are well-meaning people who impose regulations for what seem like good reasons,
Mhm.
but they have negative consequences. It's like that Thomas Sowell saying, there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs.
Mhm.
Here's I think what the good people who want to protect the health of Americans would say. I think they would say, we want to assure that Americans have good quality medicines. So we will create a system of regulation in America that will regulate drugs very carefully. And that will assure that when you take a pill, you're getting the right thing and it's the right stuff. It sounds great,
Mhm.
but there's a trade off. It means that there's basically a monopoly within the United States. You can't go and get your drugs from Canada or Mexico. I think the libertarian approach of giving people the freedom to get their drugs from Canada or Mexico is a really good thing, because that competition would help keep drug prices down in America, because faced with high costs in America, a lot of people will go get their drugs somewhere else. And if they have that freedom, then the cost of the drugs in the US would come down to match. The do-gooders would also say that, well, if you do that, that restricts the financial incentive to develop new drugs in America. And that's true. That's one of the trade-offs. On the other hand, a libertarian approach would reduce a lot of the regulations that make it so costly to innovate new drugs. And so innovation might actually be better in a system. It would almost surely be better in a system with less regulation, because you look at the innovations in healthcare, and there have been some major ones, but compare that to the innovations in televisions, in cell phone technology, in automobiles. There's so much more innovation when there's less government, in areas where there's less government regulation and economic incentives to innovate.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask then, how do you respond to people that might come back and say, okay, that sounds great, Mr. Feldman. However, unlike a TV, a drug could be very harmful. So if we loosen regulations, with the idea that, hey, it's going to bring the cost down, those regulations, well, they're there to keep me safe. And a lot of people might object to that on the grounds of safety, because a TV, if I'm watching my TV and it catches on fire, it's not like something that I've consumed inside of my body. I could like run away. There's a significant difference, in fairness to people who might object. So how would you respond to people that are concerned about safety issues?
Yeah, this is the most fundamental question you've asked so far, I think. It gets to the heart of what libertarianism is. We're not going to be forcing anybody to buy their drugs from Canada or Mexico. They can still buy, high quality American products should they choose to do so, but we're giving them the freedom to choose what's best for them. Libertarianism is a very humble philosophy. It's not, I want to be able to do whatever I want. It's a philosophy that says, if you elect me, I will be humble enough to say that I don't know what's best for you. You get to live your life the way you want to live it. So if you want to buy high quality products from America, great. If you want to take your chances buying from Canada, which I think it's pretty safe to buy from Canada, go ahead, do it. That's your responsibility to yourself. It's kind of like Spider-Man in a way. With this great power to be Spider-Man came great responsibility. With freedom comes the responsibility to make good choices. I don't think the government should be telling you what drugs you could put in your body, period. Any kind of drugs. That should not be the government's responsibility. But I'm not going to do drugs. I don't drink alcohol, except maybe, a little bit of wine on a Jewish holiday when we're required to drink it. I've never smoked a joint of marijuana. The last time I was offered one was in Las Vegas at the Sphere. I went to a Dead and Company show. That was kind of an interesting experience. There's so many things I think the government restricts us from that I think we should be permitted to do that I am not going to do, because I have the personal responsibility to take care of myself. I think you should live your life the way you want. I don't think the government, it's the government's business telling you how to do it. But that comes with great responsibility for yourself, for you to make the right decisions.
Gotcha. So let me ask again though, how do we address the concerns that if we reduce regulation, somebody might say, well, I'm willfully taking this drug under the guise that this drug is safe. But we've removed regulations that presumably would ensure its safety. How do you allay the concerns of people that, hey, they're making a choice on their own accord, but perhaps there's something with the medication that they don't know about that would have been otherwise discovered with the regulation? How do you allay those concerns with people? Because many people have taken we went to the doctor. Well, I don't know if many people, I went to the doctor, come back with my script. I have opened it up, read the whole sheet and said, the hell with this. I'm not taking this. right? Because I've determined that the risk isn't worth it compared to, what we're trying to resolve. And then, then I find out and I'm like, no, I'm not taking this. But it seems like the risk might be even higher with fewer regulations. So how do you deal with those concerns?
I think we have examples of how companies have a strong incentive to produce safe products.
Hmm.
I think Volvo can charge a premium for their cars because they have created a perception through hard efforts of making their cars exceptionally safe.
Hmm.
When my first son, turned 16 and got his driver's license, I put him in a Volvo, a used Volvo, a big old tank of a Volvo, because I cared about his safety.
Okay.
Companies like Johnson and Johnson, um, they have an incentive, for their products to be perceived as safe. And so they will go to immense efforts to create packaging that assures that your product hasn't been tampered with, that from beginning to end, when you buy their product, it is a safe one. So, in a more libertarian world, you'll have some fly-by-night company saying, hey, you could buy cheaper stuff from us. And then you'll have the Johnson and Johnsons of the world saying, we will assure you that when you buy our product, you're going to get a high quality product. That may even be better than government regulations.
Gotcha. Okay. So we're just shifting then. We're basically turning things around and saying, number one, we're going to reduce the regulation. But on the other hand, we're going to rely on the market and people's reputation within the market to drive the safety. So Johnson and Johnson, for example, they would, they don't want their reputation damaged. And so they're going to go through, it's kind of funny because and maybe nobody's brought this up, or maybe they have, but it seems to me that companies in some way are already doing the work, right? They're just doing it at the behest of government versus the behest of the market. And the market might actually be more demanding, as you kind of alluded to a moment ago. You said they might even do a better job without the regulations because the market can be a brutal place. As I've told my audience many times, I'm like, the market will shut your store down and it won't even shed a tear and just keep moving, right? So I think that's an interesting point, and I think it's worth uh, people considering. So, since we're talking about drugs, let's shift over to illicit drugs because we all know that this is libertarians' favorite topic, or at least as claimed by our critics. So, yes or no? Decriminalize all drugs.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
As long as you're not hurting other people, you should live your life as you choose to do. But that said, don't do drugs,
Right.
teach your
Right.
children not to do drugs, be a good role model for them and stuff.
Right.
But the government shouldn't be telling us how to live our lives.
And what do you say? And this goes back to the safety issue. What do you say to people who have lost someone due to drug abuse? Who, because a lot of people believe that, hey, if we had better laws, my loved one might still be here. What do you say to the people? Because it's a tough argument, right? Like, and if we're gonna say, hey, we want to decriminalize drugs, we have to answer these questions to people because they're relevant questions, especially if you're running for office. What do you say to those people?
Well, there's the being empathetic with them on the one hand, and then
Mhm.
there's good policy on the other. So I'm natural nerd in math, chemistry, and physics. I've
Mhm.
learned in medicine I have to learn to be more empathetic in how I talk to folks, and that's tough. But in terms of the policy, my mom, I grew up in the Washington D.C. area. My mom worked at the National Institutes of Mental Health back in the early '70s, and I can remember the anti-drug signs there. We've had a war on drugs for over 50 years, and we have and those family members have died despite our war on drugs.
Mhm.
Um, what we've been doing has been a failure. We knew from prohibition that prohibiting alcohol was worse than not prohibiting it. That
Mhm.
if you if you allow drugs to be used, then you eliminate all of the criminality surrounding the drug world.
Mhm.
You the cost of drugs become essentially zero because they cost so little to produce, which means that nobody has an economic incentive to convince your child to try the drugs and to get them hooked. So there'd be hopefully fewer people getting hooked on strong drugs in the first place. And to whatever extent you were getting involved with drugs, you would be able to buy drugs that you knew what you were buying, that they weren't adulterated with deadly fentanyl. You'd
Mhm.
be able to get the morphine you felt like. And you'd be able to buy it along with a Narcan inhaler so that if you did overdose by accident, you could save your life immediately. So there's all kinds of health benefits to even the drug addict by having a deregulated system, a decriminalized system. And then on top of that, you have all the additional benefits of eliminating drug cartels. Boy, the last people who would want drugs decriminalized would be the drug cartels because then their
Right.
business would disappear. And if you got rid of the drug cartels, then you're getting rid of a lot of the problems in Mexico and Central America or South America that causes life to be hard for people there and that causes them to want to come to our country illegally. And so you eliminate a big part of our border problem uh, by decriminalizing drugs. It's, it's a win-win.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So basically, the answer here is, hey, we decriminalize drugs, and what that does is that takes this existing system that is fraught with danger and problems and starts breaking those problems apart so that we can address the issues in a better, more effective way. But on top, so for instance, more effective, like, hey, if I can go to Walmart, if I can go to CVS and I can buy certain drugs, then I'm going to have a certain level of confidence that it's not going to be laced with something that's very, very harmful for me. Also, I know that, hey, if I'm asking for 10 milligrams of something, I'm getting 10 milligrams as opposed to something else, something that's, like we said, cut up or whatnot. But then also, hey, I'm able to now buy Narcan or other things that should I accidentally take too much, now I can preserve my life and and rather than lose it. So it sounds to me like it's counterintuitive in a way, right? Because we're saying, hey, the system itself has danger baked into it. And by unraveling this system, we unravel the baked in inherent dangers so that we can address them differently. So yeah, I agree. I have no issues. So in the last few weeks, there seems to be a coordinated campaign, and you may not have seen it. It depends on if you're online, too much or not. But there's been a somewhat of a coordinated campaign against marijuana. It was spurred on by a New York Times article that kind of backed down from their prior position of legalizing marijuana. And a lot of influencers and large accounts were pushing studies that show marijuana is extremely dangerous. Claims ran from increased heart attacks to psychosis. How do you respond to these medical claims? Are you familiar with them? And I know that you're a dermatologist, so this may or may not be something that you've read up on. But just in terms of the conversation that's being had against marijuana, how do you respond to some of these medical claims?
Yeah, I'm a pointy headed, elitist, academic dermatologist. If you ask me how long have I been in school, I'd go, well, let's see, I'm 67. I started when I was 5. I've been in school for 62 years. I do a lot of research. I'd have to look at the studies in detail.
Mhm.
I'm very reticent about believing a lot of these studies because they're really hard to prove. How
Mhm.
would you prove that it was causing psychosis or heart disease? It's very difficult. As we've said, if you criminalize it, if you keep it criminalized, it's been 50 years of failure, and you're ruining people's lives. You're making them felons. You're making them unemployable. It's just bad for our economy. And the cost of incarcerating the people is enormous. There's all of this bad stuff. If it's true that marijuana is bad, hey, then I'm doing the right thing now already, not doing it not because the government doesn't tell me to, but because I don't want to do drugs. Mm-hmm. And so even if you decriminalize it and you make the information available to people, they can choose for themselves whether their life is better with it or without it. If you elect me, I will have the humility to say, I don't know what's best for you. Mm-hmm. You get to choose, and you have to take responsibility for the choices that you make.
Gotcha. All right, fair enough. I want to talk to you about your opponents. So it looks like I looked up the position the seat that you're running for, and it looks like it's pretty heavily Republican. And there's about, I don't know, like 6 or 7 Democrats that are running. I don't know if we need to talk about them because it doesn't seem likely that they're going to win that seat. But let's talk about the Republicans really quickly. Pat Harrigan is the incumbent. How would you grade his last term? Because he's running for re-election.
Yeah. Harrigan, I am certain, wants peace just as much as I do. I'm certain that he wants to have a fiscally strong nation, that he wants to leave his children a fiscally secure and secure in every way country. And I would rate his approach and effectiveness as inadequate. The goals are right, but he's supported massive federal deficits. That under the last few years of the Obama administration, the deficits were dropping. And then Trump came in, deficits ballooned, and that was before COVID when they ballooned even further. The spending is out of hand, and we haven't touched healthcare except maybe rounding errors. We have to make major changes to healthcare if we're going to bring down that massive component of federal spending. Harrigan has supported killing people in other countries as a way to become safer. I do not support killing people I don't think it makes us safer. So from my perspective, his goal is fine. The goal is to make the world safer for our children. The approach is wrong. And the military spending is wrong. It's not, we just need to defend our borders. We don't need to police the world.
Gotcha.
By policing the world, we actually make the world less safe. Where we have the best of intentions. There's no question we have the best of intentions. But what we've been doing, I think, is wrong. Any other major issues? Those are the things, peace in our world and fiscal security. Those are the things that even they would say these are important goals. And I was a Republican through 2016. In 2016, the Republican Party did something unimaginable. They nominated somebody whose idea of a good personal lawyer was Michael Cohen. If you look at the people that our president has hired, who the president said are incompetent, I can't count the people on that list. It's so long.
Right.
I don't think we have a good role model for being peaceful to others in just the kind of language that we see coming from our administration. And so seeing Republicans in the House support the things we're doing in terms of high deficits and violence in our world is just anathema to me. It doesn't sit well with me anymore. I'm not saying they're not well-meaning.
Right.
They're good, caring people across the board, but their effectiveness it's been ineffective. And
gotcha.
The other thing I think we need,
wrong approach.
Yeah, and the lack of civility, I think, is a major concern. I get emails from Republicans in the U.S. House saying the Democrats have a sinister plan to destroy the nation or things along those lines. No, they don't. The Democrats are good folks. The Republicans are good folks. We need to stop throwing shade on each other. We need to work together.
Mhm.
There's this lack of bipartisan effort, which means they can't address the big problems, which are the spending on military, the spending on healthcare, the spending on Social Security, and the interest on the debt. You have to work together to do that. And you have to recognize that people on both sides are good to be able to work together.
Gotcha. Last question here. Very simple. What have I missed that you really wanted to tell voters?
I think we've gotten across the key principles.
Mhm.
What is libertarianism? It's a humble philosophy that says that I don't know, and the government doesn't know, the people you elect don't know better than you do how you should live your life, and that you should have take personal responsibility for the decisions you make.
Gotcha.
But I think I bring to it something that most libertarians don't bring to it, and that's the idea that really it's the best of times. The people, we don't have evil people in the other major parties that are trying to do bad things, that are corrupt, that want to hurt others. No, we all share common goals and values. We may prioritize those values differently. On abortion, one side will claim they want to kill babies. The other side claims they want to control women's bodies. Neither side wants to control women's bodies. Neither side wants to kill babies. But one side prioritizing keeping the government out of women's health decisions higher than protecting the baby. The other side prioritizes protecting the baby more than they prioritize that the government shouldn't interfere in women's health care decisions. But both sides are good folks trying to make the world better for people. So I'm very optimistic about Americans, about people in other countries. My experience in medicine has told me that when you actually go and talk to people in the other groups, you find they're not that different from you. And I think that's the way we should be thinking about how we make decisions for our country.
Gotcha. How do people support you, sir?
Go to my website, Steve Feldman, for Congress.com. You can find how to support me there. But more important than supporting me is supporting these ideas, sharing these ideas with others, that not having the government tell you what to do, but taking personal responsibility is a very good philosophy, that the golden rule is a very good philosophy, that we need fiscal responsibility. And that doesn't mean cutting taxes. It means finding a way to cut government spending. And maybe most importantly right now, spread the ideas, call your congressman, say that you do not support violence in our world. Even that supporting violence as a way to achieve peace is a misguided way of achieving peace.
Gotcha. I'm going to put you backstage. If you need to go, that's fine. If not, you can stick around and we can chat for a moment after the show. Thank you so much for joining me this morning, sir. And good luck to you on your run for House, what is it, District 10? Yeah, I almost forgot. I was going to say District something else. But District 10 up there in North Carolina, sir. Good luck to you.
Thank you for taking the time to share me and others with your audience. And I really appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. All right, folks, that's a wrap for today. Hope you found the show informative and inspiring. I want you to do me a favor. Stop back by later and drop a comment in with your thoughts. Let it swirl around in your head. Come back and, hey, did we miss something? Do we need to offer a correction? Or maybe you just want to be promiscuous with praise. Whatever the case is, I'm all ears. But with that being said, I'm all out, and I will see you tomorrow morning with another episode of the Liberty Dad podcast. And don't forget, tomorrow night and then Thursday morning and Thursday night, I have 3 more candidates. I talked about them at the beginning of the show. So if you want to check out who they are in advance, go back to the beginning of the show and get that info. But until then, I will see you guys later. Have a good one. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop.
They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and Buy Me a Coffee, because, every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.